All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Patch Notes podcast, your one-stop shop for esports news, patch notes, and the occasional interview or two. I'm your host, Alex, aka Overlord, and I am joined today by my co-hosts, Nathan, aka Goose.
You always get that messed up every time.
Not every time. I try for a little bit of consistency. And then I'm also joined today by Braden, aka Psychotic.
Yep.
All right, well, let's jump into the patch notes about specifically Ubisoft Forwards. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ubisoft Forward was an event that Ubisoft held on the 10th of September, so we are about 6 days late to this, but that's just how things go on the date that we're recording this. At least we are 6 days late. So Ubisoft Forward, for those of you who don't know, is a showcase that a gaming company called Ubisoft does where they unveil what they've been working on, what they're looking forward to, and kind of release a bunch of different games and ideas for games, as well as some news about already existing games. So we're going to start it off kind of with something that their CEO recorded, I believe it was. If I check here,
Yes.
it should be their CEO. So their CEO did a video about sexual misconduct, which has been something that's been kind of in the news lately. Over quarantine, it was a really big deal. A lot of top executives were called out for being very, very inappropriate in the workplace. So I think this is a good step for Ubisoft and a step in the right direction to kind of put Ubisoft back on its course as a friendly, trustworthy kind of gaming company.
Yeah. It also talks about racism and diversity, lack of diversity.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been interesting to me because they're based out of Montreal, right? If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken. So yeah, so it's certainly an important topic that they need to discuss. There wasn't much we wanted to discuss here. I just kind of wanted to address it and say, I think it's a good first step that Ubisoft is taking. Any thoughts on it, Goose?
Not really. It seems like a lot of companies are doing this anyway, and they're just kind of jumping onto that train.
That is certainly an interesting perspective on it. Yeah. So moving on, one of the first announcements to come out of Ubisoft Forward was a game called Immortals: Phoenix Rising.
Looks
So
stupid.
it, you can always trust Goose for a very frank answer. So it apparently takes place in a Greek mythological style world that literally, I'm going to be really honest here, it looks like the exact same graphics engine that they used for Breath of the Wild. Like, it literally looks like a Legend of Zelda game.
It's just rebranded Breath of the Wild. That's probably going to be worse.
Yeah, I don't know. And I was in the live stream, right, when they were like unveiling the games and like, oh, this is gonna be our plan, yada yada yada. A lot of people were not so happy with the idea of Phoenix Rising or whatever it's called. It's called Immortals: Phoenix Rising. A lot of people were not incredibly happy with the way the game looked or the fact that this just didn't seem like it was on top of anybody's priority list as far as things they wanted to hear
Yeah,
about.
well, that's what it is. It's people wanted to see all of the big name releases, all like people wanted to see Rainbow Six Quarantine, which was teased a while ago, and we haven't heard anything else about it. And it just, and in general, it just Immortals: Phoenix Rising, it just looks like a indie game. It doesn't look like it'd
Yeah,
be
it kind of
a
looks like a
game
Steam
from a
release.
big
Like
box
it looks like
studio.
something I'd pay $20 for on Steam. It's certainly not something I'd be willing to shell out $60 for, as a premium AAA game title. I mean, and they talked a little bit about narration. So it looks like the gods. It's gonna be like between Prometheus is gonna be narrating, and then Zeus is intermittently gonna pop in and narrate. And just to me, it seems like a bizarre choice from the studio who's got so many other projects on the table that they've added this one that nobody really seems to want to buy. I mean, obviously there are people who are like, "Oh, it looks pretty and stuff," but it's like I wouldn't pick this up for $60 from a AAA game studio. I would pick this up for $20 on Steam off of an indie early access.
Probably not even $20, maybe like 15.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it just does not look like something that I would necessarily want to pay full price for. Certainly, I would probably wait till it goes on sale. To be totally honest with
Do,
you.
do you want to? Do you want to hear what I like when I first saw it? What I thought?
Sure,
I thought it was a mobile game.
it does.
Kind
I'm
like
pretty sure a lot of people also said something similar in the live stream. They're like, "Oh, this looks like a mobile game kind of deal," and
Well, like the way the abilities worked and stuff, and like like the camera angles we saw in the trailer, it just looked like it would play as a mobile game, kind of like the Tom Clancy's Elite Squad, where you just kind of like click things. It looks like that's how it was played, even though I know it's not. It's still it looks like a mobile game.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. What are your thoughts on this, Psychotic?
Well, I don't really care for it that much, and I don't know how many other people actually wanted this to be a game.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people expressed as they were. This was probably the least favorite release out of the
It looks like
lineup here.
more of the single player games, people who like to play those.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? I think only time will tell, and once we actually get our hands on it, I think we might change our minds. But until then, I'm pretty dead set, and I don't think I'd pay, much over $20 for it, honestly. So moving on to another thing out of the Ubisoft lineup was the Sands of Time Prince of Persia remake. Now, I got to be real with you guys. I never played the original. Have either of you guys played the original?
No, but I do know it was actually pretty popular.
Well, that's the
I know a
thing.
lot of people liked
It does seem like it. I mean, they wouldn't be remaking it necessarily if it weren't a good game to begin with, or at least I'd hope they wouldn't be remaking it. If it were a bad game to begin with. But yeah, so I think that the Sands of Time promises to be maybe an interesting platformer. The graphics did look a little bit clunky though, at least from what I saw.
That's what I've been hearing too. The graphics just didn't look on par with games that are out now.
Well,
And
if you look at it, it says the 2003 classic Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time is getting a new remake in 2021 for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. Now, those are going to be, by that point, those are going to be previous gen consoles, and while people may have them, I don't know if this game would be enough to have somebody say, hey, I want to whip out my PS4 and my Xbox One after I've had my PS5 out or my Xbox. What's the latest Xbox One called?
I don't know, mini fridge. I don't know what it's called.
It's Xbox Series X and
Is it
Series
Xbox
S.
Series X and S? But yeah, so I don't personally, the game looks good, but the graphics to me do not warrant all.
I think they did
attention.
respond. I think they did respond to that, saying that those were like pre-alpha graphics and like testing graphics, and that the actual in-game graphics are better. And I don't have it with me, but they've released a screenshot that apparently looked better than the graphics in the trailer.
I mean that certainly shows some hope. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Psychotic?
Well, I know nothing about the game.
You're gonna keep it honest. At least you're gonna keep it honest here. So I mean, from an outside perspective, what are you thinking?
Well, I can't really put an opinion on it, besides of how it looks.
Interesting.
And I mean, you could tell it's a remake,
yeah,
and not a brand new.
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, I don't know. I never played the original Prince of Persia. I don't think I've ever even seen the movie. Wasn't there a movie Prince of Persia? Unless I'm crazy, I think there was a movie.
If it's a
Prince
video
of
game
Persia.
movie, there's probably a reason that we haven't heard of it.
No, let me check it. Prince of Persia. Yeah, it was a film. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time was 2010, PG-13 action adventure. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, I figured there was some sort of movie. They even had like Lego sets out about it at one point. I remember like scrolling through the Lego catalog, and they would
Actually,
have,
I
like,
do remember the Prince
they
of
would have
Persia
Prince of Persia Lego sets like that. I love how we haven't even seen the movie or played the video game. All we can remember is the freaking Lego sets coming out of the catalogs when we were like what 9, 10. Earlier than that actually, because if it was 2010, that would have put the Lego sets out at like 2011. If I think about it a little bit.
I think there might have been Lego sets from the video game itself too.
Like from from the video game?
And that was out before I was
okay.
born.
Yeah. Because I remember it was like a minecart thing, and it was okay. I remember that. No, so as far as the reveal trailer, it seemed like a lot of people like really liked the idea of a Prince of Persia remake. Not necessarily in the ways of like we still want information on these other games, but like for the most part, people seem satisfied or at least slightly enjoyed the idea of a remake of a classic game. And that's what's kind of troubling me is have they remade any other game? I know Ubisoft has remade games, obviously, but this is to me strikes me as like the first major game that they've been trying to remake, and I hope that they actually like continue to like push out original stuff and not just lean on what they've already got. You know,
I mean, do you kind of remaster as a remake?
which one?
You kind of remaster as a remake.
Yeah.
I think yes, you do.
All right. Yeah. Assassin's Creed 3 was a pretty big one. I remember that.
Yeah, didn't they reskin it or retexture it for HD or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, they like retextured it. Yeah, I don't know.
I
It's
mean,
something I'd be interested to try out at some point.
Ubisoft games I'd like to see to have like a remaster, so they look nicer, just because of the graphics quality you can get with games now, especially with the new 300 series graphics cards coming out.
The
Like,
Lego.
Yeah, that's gonna be
4K HD.
interesting. I think that's gonna usher in a different era, but that is a topic for another time or another day. So let's get back to the patch notes, as it were.
oh, actually, I have one more thing about the Prince of Persia.
Yeah,
I feel like people would have enjoyed that reveal, like that reveal trailer more if it wasn't like the second largest thing in this entire event.
yeah, I feel like
First being
and also
Phoenix.
going back to Phoenix Rising and Sands of Time, like they're good games, but they're not games that I would put as like my flagship titles because neither of them are graphically impressive. Neither of them convey, neither of them are neither of them I don't think they apply to a large demographic, or at least part of like what Ubisoft has built up, because Ubisoft has now built a reputation on multiplayer games, right? So I honestly I don't know, because I think that those should not have been the flagship games. I think there should have been some other major announcement. Maybe they should have started with, later on down the line we'll get to Watch Dogs Legion, but like maybe that should have been their focus, or their national Rainbow
that
Six
was their
League.
focus the last
Well,
Ubisoft
yeah,
Forward.
but like, yeah. Any way you slice it, a remake and a practical reskin of Breath of the Wild should not have been the flagship titles for this year, I don't think.
Yeah. The only like single player games that I've played from Ubisoft, like all the way through, is Assassin's Creed games, and those I actually pay, full price for $60, just because they're fun. It doesn't feel like a single player game because I always have so much to do, so much competition when it comes to how many AI will run at you somewhere where you go, like in a restricted area. Every guard in the area will just run after you, and you have to fight all of them.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think I'm gonna be interested to see what those two games kind of bring to the table. It's just, to me, it's not. They shouldn't have been flagship. Anyway, so moving on from that, Riders Republic. I have a love hate relationship with this announcement. So Riders Republic, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of modeled after Steep, which was the original game that I believe this was based off of. Massive multiplayer game from the creators of Steep. Instead, this time it's extreme sports, so it's cycling, it's snowboarding, skiing, just about any kind of outdoor activity you can imagine in a video game. And it seems like they're going to be trying to go for a much grander scale on this time around. They call it Riders Republic, but I basically just call it Steep 2.0, because that's basically what it is. It's Steep with more things to do, more maps to see, and just kind of more spectacle to build. And it looks like it's going to be on a grander scale too, and hopefully with a little bit more structure than the original Steep, because the original Steep was open world. It was kind of go wherever you please, do whatever you please with these, snowboarding, skiing, I think paragliding or whatever. It was a very open, free concept kind of game. It looks like Riders Republic is going to take a little bit of like a separation from this. Like, I think there might be some sort of campaign where it's like you have to do bigger and better races to gain fans, to sign sponsorships, to like get to bigger and better races kind of deal, until you get to the top or something like that. But I think that was what turned a lot of people off from the original Steep, was just there was a lack of storyline. There was no reason to keep playing. Like, once you had done something once, you were done.
Yeah, I think it's very
fair.
pretty interesting what they have in here though. Wingsuiting. That sounds pretty interesting.
I know.
Yeah,
I know
that
Goose
was
was a
in
huge
a
fan of the
Steep.
wingsuiting.
Not just wingsuiting, jet suiting.
Yeah. I see that too.
Well, I'm just that was in the I'm guessing you don't know about it, but it was in the Steep game, which is like a winter sports thing, but it also had wingsuits and jet suits. And I very much enjoyed the jet suits and trying to dive bomb Alex on the snowboard.
That was an interesting time. I'm not gonna lie. No, but it did. The original Steep did give me some form of enjoyment. You know, it was not a bad game to play. It was just not. It wasn't full of enough content to keep you interested, like going forward. And I think that that's something that Ubisoft is definitely gonna have to improve on if they want to make Riders Republic stick. Is they're gonna have to include a lot more content than Steep did. They're gonna need some sort of campaign, something to keep players invested beyond that original like first 1 to 2 hours of gameplay.
Yeah, I tried getting back into it multiple times, but it just kind of it just didn't work out because I had I've done most of what I could do and just kind of lost interest.
It's kind of how it feels in like Far Cry or Ghost Recon sometimes, because after you do everything, it's kind of like, well, what do I do now? You know, you have like all outposts liberated. You already beat the whole story mode, and it kind of just leaves you where you're stuck.
And that really goes for a lot of single player games,
Yeah.
honestly, because you'll go through the story and then you can do the story again, or you could just not play the game again.
I just
That's
wish
why
like
I liked Detroit Become Human, is because you could have multiple endings and play it multiple times.
it's been a really long time since I played Far Cry. I don't think that they can recapture their outpost. They might be able to. I don't remember. It's been a long time. But that'd be cool to see if like, you know, you hop back on and then you have like 3 more outposts to go capture because they recaptured them.
That is one thing. I played Far Cry 5 and I played Far Cry New Dawn. And despite what most people said about Far Cry New Dawn, I actually enjoyed that game. I didn't buy it for full price though. I bought it for like $10 on sale, and I still only spent 8 hours playing it to like beat the campaign. And that was like I was ready to face the final bosses 6 hours in, but I had to like grind for some more loot just so I could actually defeat the last bosses. But no, I liked Far Cry New Dawn, and I really liked the idea of having them recapture it with higher difficulty enemies, and then you would get more I think it was like crude oil or something. You get more crude oil to upgrade your home base based on recapturing the settlements over and over again. And what I think would be interesting if they do for Far Cry 6 is if they created some sort of system where like there are sectors, right? And I know obviously it's divided up into 3 sectors before, but like I would like it if they could combine something like Wildlands with something like Far Cry and do like, okay, so this sector is controlled by 9 territories. Each one's got its own miniature boss, right? And then you see the map develop as you fight. You can see the towns develop more and more as you build a resistance. And on top of that, what I would like to see is I would like to see less random encounters the more bad guys you defeat. Like, so there's actually like a, not a fixed number, but like a very like, if it's like, okay, the spawn rate for bad guys for random encounters is this, after you defeat like one of the bosses, it should go down, you know, to like actually realistically reflect you taking down the entire army.
Yeah.
All right, so we kind of covered it. I don't remember what the initial reaction for Riders Republic was. Now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure it was like, oh great, another Steep. Like I don't think a lot of people are actually like enthralled or excited to see a new kind of Steep title. I don't think anybody's particularly thrilled about the idea of it.
Hmm.
But no. So next on the docket here is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. The game returns. I don't think that was a remake, but it was an adaptation of a comic book, which I thought. Yeah, go ahead.
I just can't tell you much about that because I missed a lot of the announcements because I was getting my braces off. So I'm just gonna say I'm gonna put this down here. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw it. It looks like a decent game. Again, not one I would expect from a AAA game studio. Like I would pick it up, $20, Steam early access. maybe play it for a couple hours and then never touch it. I understand that there are a lot of people who are super pumped about the idea of this. A lot of people have been like, it's based on a comic strip or comic book. So I don't know what else I can say. I mean, really, I haven't seen the Scott Pilgrim comic book series, so I am just kind of interested to see what it looks like as a final product, because it did look like a very like pixely platformer type game, which is something that I don't know if I would be necessarily interested in. Pixel games are not necessarily usually my style of game.
Yeah, same here.
But no, so I've already established that we really don't have much to say about Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I know it was met with a lot of like positivity from fans and stuff, but it just I don't think it'd do it for me.
Yeah.
So now that we are getting into the meat and potatoes of this, especially for us, since we've been working so much on Rainbow Six Siege lately. They're going to be unveiling a new system. It's going to be a national international Rainbow Six Siege League, which is interesting because a couple of reasons I'll get into later. But basically, for those of you who don't know, Rainbow Six Siege is going to be holding an international World Cup kind of deal. Each country from whichever countries are participating are going to send teams to compete, and it's going to be like a national identity, patriotism kind of deal with Rainbow Six Siege. Now, I don't know. I've got a couple of thoughts on this, but first I want to hear what you guys think about it.
I think it's interesting. I think it might get more people interested in Rainbow Six Siege. I feel like it's kind of just like Six International, but instead of like straight up esports teams, it's just going to be government teams, basically. I don't know how they're going to choose who's on those teams, because I'm pretty sure we don't already have a national team.
Well, that's something I kind of want to get into, is how I think Ubisoft will do this is they're going to franchise out spots for the teams and for the leagues. And I am not a huge fan of that because so basically the way Rainbow Six Siege Esports works now, for people who don't know, is there are 4 tiers, right? Tier 1 is Pro League, best of the best. You're competing in matches like officially sanctioned by Ubisoft, right? Tier 2 Esports is Challenger League, which is right below Pro League. Does anybody know the analogy for football? Because like if T1 is the NFL, T2 is like college football or something like that. Probably something close to that. But no, so T1 is best of the best. T2 is like right on the edge of Pro League. Not as good as Pro League, but like just on the edge. T3 is organized leagues that take place, online. Kind of last week when we were talking about ESA, that's a T3 league. So it's where organized teams go and compete, but they're not necessarily sanctioned by Ubisoft, and they are they're more official than T4. T4 is like your regular like, hey, 2 teams just kind of chill, or it's like a casual prize pool, that kind of deal. It's not very official. It's not really structured and set up efficiently kind of deal. So that being said, it is possible for one team to go from T4 to T1, without needing to pay like $10 million to get in a slot for Pro League. Like, you can just get to Pro League by working hard and making your way through Challenger League to Pro League. Like, anyone can do it. Now, what we've seen with Overwatch League and COD is they've franchised their leagues, which means teams usually have to pay an entry fee that'll guarantee them a couple of seasons, and then they can stay in for that many seasons, and then they'll find a different team if that team's not performing or anything like that. I think that this is a bad direction for Rainbow Six to take. I don't think franchising is a good idea because it doesn't kill the esports scene, but it makes it a lot less attainable. Like, it's a lot easier to get to Pro League in Rainbow Six Siege than it is in COD or in Overwatch, because you got to be on the right team. The team's got to be able to fork over like millions of dollars for spots, and I don't know. I really don't like this change. I'm gonna let you guys give your takes for a second.
Do you know for a fact they're franchising?
I don't, but I very highly suspect that is what they'll do.
might want to say that before you go into this big rant
Well, it's
about it.
yeah. I don't know. I wanted to break down how the Rainbow Six Siege like tier ladder works basically, and how that works. But yeah, no. So they have not. To disclaimer, they have not said that they will franchise. My prediction is that they will end up franchising those spots, and Ubisoft will end up working with some form of government to franchise those spots. And I don't think it's going to end well, personally.
I don't think they'll end up franchising that because no one, people in Siege know on these teams. You need a team that works well together, and there's certain roles that these people have to play. Now, granted, when you're in these teams, you need to be able to switch up your roles. But for what I'm seeing, like all of these countries that are in here, there's 45 different countries that will be able to compete, and there's 14 countries that get a direct invitation, and that is Australia, Brazil, Canada, Chinese Taipei,
Taipei, yeah.
France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, South Korea, Spain, UK, and USA, and 31 other countries that you probably don't want to hear me name. I don't think
The 31 other countries is each like region. They have to compete
yeah,
against each other.
they have to go in a qualifier.
Well, yeah, and I
And,
figured there would be some sort of like they would start regional and then get to international. I figured there would be some sort of league structure there, but yeah, I don't know. They may just take if they've got American-based pro league teams, they may just pick and choose from already existing pro league teams and then have them serve almost like an all-star team kind of deal.
Yeah, I think they will.
That's another thing that I would suspect might happen.
What I would like to see is if they went out looking for new players instead of looking for existing players. I want to see new players in the spotlight that are insane but haven't gotten their attention yet, and I want to see them be on one of these teams. I would like to see that.
I don't know, because I think that we're gonna see a league that's so deeply ingrained that you like one of the requirements to get on the national team would be you have to be in pro league already, and then you have to be based in the country that you want to compete in, and then they'll contact you from there. Because I think that they, given the choice, they will always go with a safer choice, and I think existing pro league players are safer choices than gambling it on newer people.
Yeah, and because is there about like 3 or 4 USA teams?
I believe so. I think there's I can double check that, but
Space Station, TSM, and I want to say one more. Because that's the thing, I don't think there's enough players or teams in the USA for
well,
people.
Dark Zero, who are the NA champions, I think. Dark Zero, Space Station Gaming, TSM, Oxygen Esports, formerly Team Reciprocity, Tempo Storm, E United, Disrupt Gaming. There are plenty of North American Siege teams.
Yeah, like there's a lot of Siege teams, but how many of those get into Pro League? You know,
Yeah, it's gonna
but
be an interesting thing they're gonna
taking
have to
players from that, it's gonna cut down on those Pro League teams, and then the Pro League teams are gonna have to take new players and take that chance.
Hopefully, maybe we will see some fresh blood in the
Another
in the esports
another
team.
thing that I really like about this, obviously, the win, the cash prize for winning in Pro League is going down. Now the World Cup, I may make Pro League shoot up or down. The national or international is just it's gonna be probably a lot of money for winning one of those, if I had to guess.
And I also think they're gonna have to attach like some sort of some sort of I don't know. They're gonna have to attach some sort of value to it, but I think it's more gonna be about the nationality of it. About like, oh, look at this show of patriotism kind of deal.
Yeah, and because I mean, most of these places you're gonna have to fly to go to these games if they're held in, like in a certain country. Like, obviously, not all of them will be held in the USA, or in France. They're probably going to be held from whichever team, is home team.
Yeah, well, and that's gonna be interesting to me is how they're gonna pick home teams. Like so, and I'm wondering if the selection process for the international cup will be something like the Olympic Games, where it's like cities will like vie to be the one chosen kind of deal.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no way we're not going to see any new players because there are a bunch of different teams in this. So we probably will see a bunch of new players in the spotlight.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So, moving on, next item on the list, Watch Dogs Legion. So we didn't get a ton of information about it. They did reveal that they were going to be like partnering up with a London rapper named Stormzy. I can't really speak much to Stormzy or his music. I haven't really listened to any of it. But it does seem rather interesting that they're going to have an Aiden Pierce DLC, which is kind of a strange business idea, kind of, for me. Because even in the article that I'm looking at right now, it says additionally, Aiden Pierce, the bland cap-wearing hero of the first Watch Dogs. Like, my impression from the initial, like the first Watch Dogs was nobody really liked the first Watch Dogs because it was so dark and dingy and gloomy. And like what people liked about Watch Dogs 2 is that it like had humor in it, and people were like, it was funny, it was lighthearted, it was good,
Eccentric,
it was
right.
eccentric, yeah. So I'm wondering why they've decided to go with Aiden Pierce instead of having maybe like Wrench or I'm trying to Marcus, having Wrench or Marcus come back in and have them in a DLC, because I think they would fit right in, especially when they've been pushing the whole like, oh, you get to wear pig masks and stuff like that. Like that whole mantra, I think is much more indicative of of a more cheerful, lighter in tone kind of game than the original Watch Dogs, which was like it involved literally Aiden Pierce, like Pierce's family getting mowed down by some organized crime thing, and it was all about him getting vengeance, and everybody didn't like it because it was super dark. I don't know what Ubisoft is thinking, to be totally honest here.
And it controlled kind of weird too. At least for me, it did.
Yeah, I remember playing it, and I was like, "Oh man, these controls are really funky. Like these keybinds are whack."
I played it on controller, so I couldn't change any of that.
Yeah, that is really unfortunate. No,
Alright.
but any thoughts on that, Goose?
Having not really played many Watch Dogs games, like I've only played a tiny smidgen of Watch Dogs 2. I can't really say much on it. I guess it makes sense why they're including a rapper from London in the game. I don't know, maybe that's more of just like a partnership thing so they can get more money. But either way, it's just an interesting thing.
Yeah, and I do wonder with the Aiden Pierce thing. Sorry to get back on that, but again with the Aiden Pierce thing, does it mean then that the tone of Watch Dogs will be grittier? I mean, that's what I think. Or Watch Dogs Legion would be grittier or darker.
I don't think so at all. I think they're just doing that to bring it back to the game's roots, just so you know where it came from. But based on the stuff we've seen, it's definitely not going to be a dark and gritty game. It's going to be very like messing around, weird quips. It's I can see it's going to be that way because who doesn't want to be a granny with a taser?
That is one of the more unique opportunities that Watch Dogs Legion offers. But no. So the other thing they announced is Hyperscape, their turbo mode, which is essentially their version of Fortnite's solid gold mode, where like all the weapons are max legendary effect or whatever. They're like already maxed out. But yeah, I don't know if I agree with Hyperscape, just in general, because the game itself, I mean, I tried to pick it back up a couple days or so, or not a couple days, a couple months after the launch, and I think that it was really unfortunate to me because it seemed odd, like it seemed like the player base had clearly hemorrhaged, and it was just not. It didn't seem like a fully functioning game. Still, I think this is Ubisoft's attempt to try and bring people back into the fold.
Now, this is gonna sound really weird because I play Siege, so I hate urban warfare. So I am not. I do not like Hyperscape at all. I haven't even played it yet, and I already know I'm not gonna like it because it is urban warfare.
Oh yeah,
And
with the urban setting.
a BR and that kind of thing is just not my style.
Well, I think
Yeah,
what I think the reason you probably like Siege and not other games with urban warfare is Siege. They condense it to one building, like you'd actually
Yeah,
be
well,
attacking.
in Siege, the buildings are, they're big. You
Yeah,
know,
in Hyperscape they're kind of tiny and they don't
big
have
building,
much.
very large.
They don't have much heft to them.
yeah,
They
like
don't
you
have
got
like anything on the inside except just piles of stuff.
large hallways in Siege, and you know,
Very big buildings. No, but yeah, I don't know what to think about Hyperscape. I mean, at this point, it just seems like a failed BR on Ubisoft's part. I could be wrong, but the lobbies I was in, it seems like the player count has been hemorrhaging, and Ubisoft is just trying to get people back in for the long run, which I don't think they'll be able to get. Any final thoughts on Hyperscape before we move on?
No.
nope.
All right. So now what we should probably shift over to is what we didn't see from Ubisoft Forward, which is almost the even more important side of things. First thing on the list, Far Cry 6. Now this was a game with the trailer released, looks to take place in some sort of almost looks like Cuba, where the player character might be helping to incite rebellion. It seems like or turmoil in the country. And we didn't see anything about Far Cry 6 in this latest Ubisoft Forward, which I thought was kind of startling considering it looks to be a masterpiece of graphical design.
However,
Once
we did
again,
see
yeah. Sorry, psychotic,
the
but
yeah, it's good.
it's just there. This you can't see this as another Ubisoft Forward. What they did is they took like the Ubisoft Forward and they split it in half, and that's what this is. So they already touched on Far Cry 6 in the last Ubisoft Forward. So this one was supposed to be going into stuff that they didn't touch on the first one, and they did do a little bit with Watch Dogs Legion, but that's just because they've been announcing new stuff throughout this entire like months, and so they've decided to put some in here too. But this is basically the same thing as the other Ubisoft Forward at the start. It's like they're the same show, but they split it in half to have a break in between for some reason. So you have to look at it through that lens. They've already talked about Far Cry 6 at a Ubisoft Forward, so they're not going to do it again.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. And then, so I'm going to cover one more thing here, and then I'm going to let you take it away, Goose, with the VR titles. But Rainbow Six Quarantine was announced in February. They said it was delayed, and we still have not seen anything else concerning that, have we? I mean, it seems like it's been a pretty secretive project
No.
over at Ubisoft.
Absolutely nothing from that. We got the first reveal. We got the quick little like snippet of like the most vague idea of what the game is going to be possible, and then it just got delayed to oblivion.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just not going to be in Ubisoft's like fiscal year or something like that, but it seems like it's been kind of shoved to the side out of with
I think
as
they're
compared to all
either
those other
I
Ubisoft
think they're
titles.
either delaying it for like a year or even more, or they're just canceling the project altogether. Is what I think.
From what I've heard, it's gonna launch somewhere in March 2021.
Well, and that's interesting considering wasn't it supposed to launch in March 2020 and it's gotten pushed back almost a year?
Could have been.
Or was expected release date? I thought it was like September 2020 or something like that. Um, but yeah, but no. So overall, what did you guys think of Ubisoft Forward this? Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Goose, why don't you talk about some of the VR titles that we saw?
Yes. So Ubisoft Forward, they announced 2 new VR titles, and then today they announced 2 more. So at Ubisoft Forward, they announced Far Cry VR. I didn't see much on it, but they did announce it, and I think some people may like it. There does appear to be a big shift from making classic Ubisoft games into VR capable games. And I think part of that will be because the new Oculus headsets are coming out. VR is becoming cheaper and better, like graphics wise and control wise. VR is becoming outstanding, and the headsets are no longer outrageously expensive. They're a little bit more manageable. So they announced Far Cry VR, and they also announced a space game called Agos. It looks to be like a cartoony version of Elite Dangerous, so I don't know how that's going to look. And then big titles that they announced recently was Assassin's Creed VR and Splinter Cell VR. And I think those two games are going to go wild with the new Oculus Quest 2 that was just announced. I think we're going to see lots of sales of Oculus Quest 2 games and lots of sales of Assassin's Creed VR and Splinter Cell VR.
Assassin's Creed VR is going to be so trippy.
Yeah, I think the VR titles are going to be insane visually once they come out, and it's gonna look amazing.
I don't know how Far Cry, like open world games and VR, like
That doesn't
I
seem
don't.
like they would mix.
VR is crazy. You'll be surprised.
I'm sure
But
we
there's
will
a
be.
lot of VR.
It's Far Cry
Um,
3.
This is going to see a huge boost in VR users, and especially with Oculus, who a lot of people are really upset with right now for a few things that I don't really want to get into right now. But basically, Facebook took over Oculus completely, and a lot of people are unhappy with that because Facebook said they wouldn't, and they ended up doing it. So that's making people unhappy. But the Assassin's Creed VR and Splinter Cell VR are going to be Oculus exclusive titles. So you're not going to be able to play them on the HTC Vive, the Valve Index, unless you get what's it called? It's called like Oculus Link or something, or like
Something like that. But
there's
yes,
the software to do it.
Yeah, it's some piece of software, I think. But no. So, any last thoughts on Ubisoft Forward, guys?
I'm really disappointed with the new one they had. I think they could have announced some cooler things, maybe even just anything more about things that we've been wanting, like just like a snippet of Rainbow Six Quarantine saying, "We're sorry it was delayed, and we're still working on it." Just like that would have been satisfactory for me. Anyways, that's my idea.
Any thoughts from you, Psychotic?
Uh, well, personally, I didn't watch it.
But yeah,
Just Dance 2021. Surprised to see that.
maybe it'll be a welcome levity break from previous dark and dismal titles. But no, so this has been the Patch Notes podcast brought to you by Entity Esports. Thank you all for listening. You can catch us on Twitter at entity _ esports. We also post down below, if you are watching from YouTube, link to our Discord, our Twitter. And if you would consider subscribing if you are on YouTube, we would appreciate that as well. And next week, we will hopefully have a special guest, the director of a Rainbow Six Siege T3 organization. We will be interviewing him, doing some talks about that, and hopefully providing you guys a greater insight into what it means to be in a Rainbow Six League. Thank you all, and goodbye.